I know that that fight bothers Conor because he didn't train at all for that fight. Twice a week he was training for Khabib.
Let us move along to our next guest. So very exciting to talk to this man. It has been, as the kids say, a minute since we last spoke to him. It's been several years to be exact. And quite frankly, when I started the week, didn't think that he'd be on this Tuesday. But then we woke up on Monday and saw a post that he was returning to MMA for the first time in 7 years, fighting this October under the PFL umbrella in Abu Dhabi against his old bitter rival Zubaira Tukhugov. It is the GOAT himself, the pride of both Russia and Ireland, the Russian hammer himself, Artem Lobov. Is he actually here? I don't believe it. There he is. Artem.
Yes, boys.
Welcome back.
Thank you so much. It's good to be back and great to see you, Ariel.
It's wonderful to see you. Thank you so much, Artem. It's so great to have you back. It's so great to talk to you again. And so is this in fact true? You essentially broke the news. Is this true? Are you coming back in October?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when I was signing the contract with Mike Hogan, he told me that, look, Artem, you can start, promoting the fight. This is a big fight for us. We want to, see you promote it the way you can, get it all out there. So I said, look, as soon as I sign my contract, I'm going to announce it and start promoting it, which is what I done. I signed the contract and straight away I pumped it out there and let the world know that this fight is finally happening. And I can't wait to get my hands on him finally.
Okay, and so are you coming back, Artem, because it's Zubaira, or were you always planning on coming back and they were able to make this fight?
If you recall the last interview I've ever done, it was with you, when I was retiring. And I told you, you asked me, Artem, is there any way you will come back? Is this going to be a fake retirement like many that we see? Is this a real retirement? Are you going to be back very soon? And I told you, Ariel, there's only two things that can get me back. If I get offered 7 figures, or it's a fight against Tukhugov. And I said that the fight against him is definitely going to happen. I said, no matter what, I'm going to make that fight happen. It's going to take place, and we're going to settle the score. So this is exactly what happened here. I felt this was the right time. I'm not getting any younger, and I didn't want to wait any longer because then it just would be ridiculous, 2 lads in wheelchairs, trying to fight.
Yeah.
So I said, right, let me do it, But, I have been in talks with different promotions, especially from Russia. I've had a few offers, but I just didn't really, it didn't ignite the fire in me, and the offers weren't big enough, so I was turning them down. However, once I realized there's a possibility for me to fight Tukhugov, I was, the fire was lit up again, and I was ready to go.
So we last spoke January 5th, 2022. That's your last interview?
Yeah.
Wow.
That was it. I just done an interview with you, and that was it. I did not do any more interviews. I didn't do any media. That was it. I just kind of,
So what have you been doing the last 3.5 years?
Yeah, so when I retired, I knew already I was going to be working with my friend in the UK. He's got a construction company. He's always kind of supported me throughout my fighting career, and I knew there was a job for me with him. When I retired, so I've just been normal, wage life, which isn't good in some sense. It's a lot quieter, it's a lot more kind of stable. But I'm not gonna lie, I did find it a little boring sometimes, and I did struggle. I'd be watching the events, and I'm not gonna lie, I did definitely miss fighting. So once this fight was announced, once I saw that I can fight again, I'm not even joking. Like something just, inside me just changed. I feel this burn again, this fire, this excitement, a little nervous, but I feel alive again. It's good that I've decided to do it. I think if I haven't done it, I would always be regretting it. And I can't wait to put on a good show for the fans and get my hands on Tukhugov and finally, show him what can happen when it's just one-on-one, me against him.
And so are you leaving that job, or are you just taking a break and then returning after this fight?
Taking a break. Just going to take a break now for, obviously camp. I'm taking this camp very seriously, so I'm not going to be doing any work. I'm just going to be, fully concentrate on the camp, training twice a day, doing loads of sparring, planning to go up to Belfast to spar Paul Hughes and the boys there. They've been kind enough to give me an invite, so got a good, lot of good sparring partners here as well. Richard Smulin, obviously, as BG Ireland, my home. Be doing a lot of training there as well. So yeah, no, I'm gonna leave no stone unturned. Don't be distracted by a few gray hairs in my beard and mustache. The hammer is still ready to go, and my testosterone is as high as ever.
I love it. I love it. And so, are you coming back for just one fight? Is it just this one and then you're done, or are you open to others?
I'm not really sure, to be honest. In terms of professional MMA, potentially maybe one and done, but I wouldn't mind, getting into some of them celebrity boxing, shows that Jake Paul and the Misfits have been organizing. The money seems to be really good there. The events are always massive, a lot of viewership, big numbers, always sold out events. So I wouldn't mind, doing something like this potentially. Also I'm planning to have a bigger family now. We're hoping to have another kid soon, trying for another baby. So I need a bigger house.
Love it. Love it.
So definitely. I think I'm gonna have another one or two fights, but this is first. I gotta get Tuhugov out of the way. It's been bothering me all these years. It's a fight that I've been thinking about so much, and I just have to do it. I feel I can't move on otherwise. I need this fight to be able to move on in my life.
Okay, so the whole incident between the two of you happened 7 years ago, right? More than 7 years ago at this point.
Yeah.
Why does it still bother you so much? Why is there still this animosity?
Well, if you remember, initially Khabib approached me alone. It was just him. And me and him spoke and we sorted everything. He said to me, listen, why are you talking shit about me? I said, look, if somebody called, your friend, the names that you've been calling, Conor, Chicken, and all this, which I told you before in Russian, it's
Yeah.
a lot more severe. I said, listen, if somebody was calling your friend that, you for sure would respond. So what do you think I'm going to do? You leave me no choice by talking like this, especially we've been so friendly with him all the time, meeting at different events, always shaking hands. Conor never went at Khabib. Khabib was the one that initiated this. So I said, I had to reply and say, well, whatever, just don't say anything else. And he walked off. That was it. But then he came back with a gang of people, and suddenly he had the exact same question again. And I was a bit confused, like, what's going on? Me and you just sorted it, two of us, one on one, and now with the 10 guys with you, you suddenly have more questions for me. And of course, if you recall, Tuhugov was there, very vocal. He was screaming at me, saying, "Oh, why don't you say it now to my face?" So, well, let's go to Tuhugov one on one, and I will say it to your face. Obviously, as Tuhugov outside of the cage, you're not going to mess with him too much because, as he himself many times mentioned, he's a relative of the Chechen president Ramzan Kadyrov, and this man is not to be messed with. He is very well respected and feared, in Russia and across the globe, So, of course, I can't, there's nothing I can do outside, and to be honest, I don't want to live that life, messing outside, fuck up your life, end up in prison or in the hospital. Who wants that? So let's do it like real men, one on one, because he talked a big game, but when I watched at his fights, he doesn't look that brave in his fights. A lot of the time he backs off, looks for wrestling all the time, he taps out. You're talking to a man that never tapped out, talking to a man that never pulled out of a fight, and I accepted the fight against anyone, anytime, any place. So, I said, let's get in the cage and settle it like professional fighters that we are.
And you were supposed to fight in October of 2018, right? Just a few weeks after Conor's fight against Khabib, and then it got canceled. And that was because of the whole melee that happened afterwards, right? That was the UFC's decision?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And that's another reason, what I mean? Just even there, what is he doing, to Hugov? Like, you're jumping into the cage of a fighter that just had a fight, is exhausted, and you're jumping with a big gang of you, and you're so brave and, attacking him, come on, that's not a way to behave, you want to jump like this and be aggressive. Well, let's go. We're going to fight now one on one, and let's see how aggressive he will be. I bet you he'll be wrestling from the changing rooms. He'll be just holding me down, and he won't want to fight. He won't want to engage. But this is your chance. You came in with punches at Conor. Well, let's see you come with punches at me now.
Were there any other talks, opportunities brought to your attention about fighting him since then? Since that fight that got canceled, since you left the UFC, was this ever close to happening in the past 7 years?
No, there hasn't been, because obviously, if you recall, he was in the UFC still, but he was suspended for a year.
Yeah.
he decided to remain in the UFC. And for me, I was like, I had a kid on the way, and I needed to be making money. I wasn't sure what's going to happen with the UFC. Are they gonna When are they going to give me another fight? And I had a massive bare knuckle contract on my table. So I said, look, I'm not waiting a year for him, and I wasn't even sure if he was going to be allowed to fight back. I didn't know what was going to happen. So I left the UFC, went bare knuckle. He stayed in the UFC, so then that was not possible. Yeah.
Is this fight happening at 165?
Yeah, so I said, listen, I'll accept any terms. I said, for me, I want that fight no matter what. So they came back with 165. I said, no problem, make it 175 if you want, 185. I don't care. Yeah, so it's
Okay.
165.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that you would fight him even for free. I hope you're getting paid for this.
Yeah, to be honest, that's how the conversation went with Mike. Mike said, "What do you want? What kind of purse do you want?" And I said, "Listen, Mike, I don't care. I want
No.
zero here. I don't care about this. But he was saying, "Look, I can't do it free. It has to be some person." So he's giving me some person. I didn't negotiate at all. I just whatever. But the good thing, I will be able to pay my team. Obviously my coaches gonna do good work, so I'll be able to pay them, and I'll make a nice donation as well to a kids charity. So it's some good will come of it for sure.
Okay. And have you seen him ever in any sort of like event, street? Like, have you guys locked eyes on each other since 2018?
Not really. No,
No.
no, I
Okay.
have not seen them at all anywhere. None of them really. Not
Okay.
Khabib, not Zubair, none of them.
Any concern about fight week? What do they say? Just to make sure that nothing happens between the two of you before the fight, right? There's a lot of
Yeah,
animosity here. Clearly, what are they saying as
yeah.
far as security and preventing things from happening?
We didn't really talk with PFL about that, but obviously, let's do it in the cage. You know what I mean? Any attempt to try and jeopardize the fight, to me, I see what this is. Trying to get out of the fight. Come on, make it to the cage and let's go. You can be as aggressive as you want in there. You can do whatever you want in there. Let's go. This your chance. Well, what is there need to jump outside the cage and then say something when we have a fight scheduled? I'm ready to fight you. I'm showing up. Just show up and that's it.
One fight deal with PFL?
Yeah, one fight deal. One fight
Okay,
deal with
wow.
PFL.
In Dubai.
Yeah. In Dubai, yeah. To be honest, sounds like a good location, to fight. I've been there before just for a holiday. It's a beautiful, beautiful place, and it's going to be good. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of Russian fans. There's going to be a lot of Irish fans.
You
So
think
it's
it will
going to
be
it's
more
going to be
pro
interesting.
Zubaira?
Uh, I think over there might be 50-50 because obviously Paul Hughes is also on the card. And Kalen Laughlin as well is on the card. So there's going to be a lot of Irish fans for them also there, who I think would support me. There's going to be a lot of Russian people supporting me as well. So I'd say it's going to be even off. I don't know, but that's kind of my kind of thoughts on that.
Okay. And as far as training is concerned, you mentioned SBG, your old mates. Are you still being trained by John Kavanaugh?
Well, John is not really. He doesn't really coach as much anymore. You rarely. He's not as much there. There's different coaching now for MMA team. But I definitely will be doing work with Narius there, who is a jiu-jitsu coach there. He's excellent. David Jones, my boxing coach, is definitely going to be doing work with him in SBG. Then actually, my good old friend Johnny Dargan is back as well. So he said he's going to help me out, working on some of my kicks, and surprise Zubaira with a couple of, tricks up my sleeve. And as I mentioned, I'm hoping to go up to Belfast, for some good sparring with the boys up there. They have a really, really good team now. They're very strong fighters. I mean, they've always had, but I think they've kind of peaked now. They're at the top now. So it will be very good to mix in with them and sharpen the tools, against the top level guys. I've seen how Paul Hughes done against Nurmagomedov in the last fight. It was a very close fight, but in my opinion, Paul won. So for sure, this is high level. High level fighter, and that's exactly the kind of fighter that I want to work with.
So we were talking a few minutes ago with your old friend Pete Carroll as well, Artem, who you know very well, about the history of this feud, and obviously a lot of it's centered around what happened between Conor and Khabib, and an unfortunate the byproduct of all of this is that, unfortunately, you and Connor aren't as close as you once were. And we were sort of talking and reminiscing about how close you used to be, how you were the best of friends, training partners, how you always supported him and he always supported you. And it really felt like a loving and genuine friendship that you had. I remember seeing you at Maymax, showing up the night before, like you said, you wouldn't have missed it for the world. And not wanting to relitigate everything that happened between you two, but it is sad to see. I think a lot of your fans and his fans would say that. Could you tell us, where do things stand between you and Connor from a personal and a legal standpoint, because it has spilled into the courts, so to
Yeah.
speak?
Yeah, unfortunately, obviously things are not good between me and Connor. As you said, we always had each other's back. I feel I showed him unmatched loyalty. I would dare for him to name anyone from all of his mates now, before, whenever, who was more loyal to him than I was. I did everything for him. Whenever we would do camps, I was the only one to never accept a cent from him. There would always be money paid to everybody that done the camps, and rightfully so. Because it was hard work. But I would always turn it down and say, Connor, I'm not taking this. You're my brother, and I'm not taking, money for training for you. The agreement has always been that if I help him, with business, I help him make money. Well, then he's going to give me my cut. And in the past, when I've done deals for him, like for example, I done a deal with him with Match TV. And he was based on our agreement, he was meant to pay me 6 grand, and he actually paid me 20,000. He always looked after me. There's never been an issue, with money with us. And for this, deal as well, whiskey deal, it was so, this was such a massive deal for me, such an important, deal for me, because people think, oh, whiskey, what's whiskey? Just drink, but not at all. If you look historically, Irish whiskey has been such an important product for Ireland. Back in the day, they used to, during the Prohibition era, they would. They would sell Irish whiskey to US in exchange for weapons so they could fight for their freedom. Imagine how notorious is that. And even back in the day also, when England was suppressing them all the time and destroying them, and they didn't have anything, but they never gave up, and whiskey was helping them fight that fight, because they had no medication here, no nothing. That's why it was called the water of life, because if you get a cut or something, you can die from infection, but you use whiskey, you disinfect yourself. Food poisoning, you drink a little whiskey, it will help with settle the stomach. If you got high fever, you spread whiskey all over you, and as it evaporates, it cools down the body. And also when they were sitting, around fire, no 800 years of war, no chance of winning this massive enemy. They would drink a little bit of whiskey, it would warm the heart, sing a few ballads, and get the power to continue the fight, to not give up and earn their freedom. So when I told this to Connor, he told me to go in and see what can I get, and I did not leave a single stone unturned. At the time when I put the whiskey together, there was actually only six companies that were able to produce their own whiskey, and I could see the potential in it, because Irish whiskey sales were fast approaching Scotch whiskey sales. However, there was only six distilleries making Irish whiskey, and 144 distilleries making Scotch whiskey. So I could clearly see there was a massive, massive gap in the market, And most importantly, when I tried to do the whiskey at the time, despite being such a big gap, entry-level whiskeys did not perform well at all on the market. It was only the higher-level whiskeys, the top shelf, as you want to call them. So whenever I was approaching all these industry experts and different distilleries, they all pushed for Connor to do an expensive whiskey. However, I understood Connor's fan base. I understood that it needs to be entry-level whiskey, and it took a lot of convincing from my part to make sure that we do an entry-level whiskey. And what you get with entry-level whiskey is, number one, you get the volume, because entry-level whiskey is what gets used to in cocktails, in if you mix whiskey and coke or whatever, so you get the volume, and that's where the price of the company comes from. That's why right now it is valued at nearly $2 billion. And with the entry-level whiskey, it gives you an opportunity to build on that. If you release an expensive whiskey, you can never then release a cheaper one, say, oh look, we have this cheap one. However, if you start entry-level, you can then release 8-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old, and build it into standalone successful company, and that is exactly what happened. And it's unfortunate that this situation happened like this with me and Conor. I have a feeling that my personal opinion is that the manager had something to do there as well, because at the time they were trying to get Conor to sign this option, as we all know that Conor does know the whiskey now, and I was very much against it, because what an option means is that if the whiskey fails, that means Conor gets nothing. If, however, is massive success as it is, his profits are limited to what the strike price is on the option. And I was so against that. I was like, why would he do that? That's a lose-lose situation for Conor. He's the A side in this. And I said, if we are going to sign an option, well, then let's at least do it for a market rate. Why is the strike price on the option below the market rate? Like, that makes no sense. Why do you want to agree right now, before it's even launched, to sell it in a few years' time below the market rate? Especially when we already had pre-orders for the whiskey before it even launched. So obviously I was fighting for every cent for Conor. I was so angry with Audi, for proposing this bad deal for Conor, and I feel that's where our relationship failed, and unfortunately, yes, I did get fucked over on this deal, even though Conor shook my hand and promised me 5% no matter what. But I guarantee you, I can't wait to be in court and show that Conor was actually proper fucked on this deal, and this is why I have to go to court. I cannot leave this like this. This is too big of a story to just let it die out in obscurity. I need to shine light on this and show who was a true and loyal friend and who was actually a snake.
And I appreciate that response. I appreciate the backstory as well. Thank you for that, Artem. Your perspective is appreciated. You're asking for 5%, right? That's what you want. Your 5% share.
Yeah, because
and what does that equal to, in your
Ariel,
opinion? Is it 6 million?
I think it's yes, I think 6.5 million or 7 million. But
Euro?
the
Yeah.
thing is, because now when I launched this, I found a lot of stuff online, and there was actually a guy involved in this deal as well. He was the guy responsible for preparing the label for the bottle that was shown at the Mayweather fight. Sean Pierce, his name is. And this guy misspelled the word whiskey on it. So this guy can't even spell fucking whiskey. And now I know that guy sued Audi. That guy got paid 4.5 million and said that he was promised another 5. So he sued Audi for another 5. So you're telling me that some lad that can't even spell whiskey was promised 10 million, but me, Conor's brother, the guy that brought this deal to the table, you know what I mean, and was always loyal, never took a cent from Conor, and he wouldn't pay me my share, as was promised. I put the biggest piece of meat on Conor's table, and he wouldn't cut me a tiny little slice so my family could eat too.
And so I saw recently. Can you explain this to me? I'm not a legal expert. There was a ruling about 3 or so weeks ago where the court said you now have to pay for the legal costs because of a mistake in the date of when the interaction
Yeah,
happened.
no, no. So what happened was I found more evidence that I really wanted to submit that obviously was helping my case.
Yes.
Um, Connor's team tried to block that evidence because it was too close to trial, but so I had to go into court, and my lawyers had to fight his lawyers, and I was allowed to accept evidence because the judge could see that this is real evidence. This is not some fake stuff. This is real, and just unfortunate that I found it so close to the trial, So I got a new trial date, but the costs I will reserve till trial,
Okay.
So the costs, I don't have to pay any costs until the trial.
And when does the trial
9th of
commence?
December. 9th of December.
9th of December. Okay. And have there been any talks of settling out of court, trying to avoid going to trial?
Not yet. No, not yet.
Are
There
you
hasn't
open to
been any,
that?
But for me, I won't listen. Money, whatever money. I want my recognition. Listen, this whiskey never happens without Conor, of course. That's why it was made for him, But I'm also one of the co-founders, and that's what I want to show in this court. I want to show all my work, the amount of work I had to do for this whiskey, to go to market. It is just incredible. And I had some very unique know-how, that, as I said to you, even industry experts, didn't see the potential in entry-level whiskey, because at the time, any entry-level whiskey that was launched was flopping because Jameson was just taking up all the market share. But I could see, based on Conor's fans, I could see, how he relates to the fans. I could see his marketing power, and I knew that entry-level whiskey was the way to go. And I was absolutely right. And it didn't really matter in the end, ultimately, which whiskey we went with, because if you recall, when it first launched, the whiskey got sold out immediately, and people were trading on eBay empty bottles of whiskey. So they just cared about Conor and his name and his image and everything else, not really so much what's inside the bottle.
So would that suggest that you are not open to settling? You want this to go to court. You want to be vindicated.
Listen, there could be, but I would like some kind of acknowledgement,
Sure.
like, listen, we can. I want, because what really got, if you recall, I was going to do a book. I wanted to do a book because they literally just pushed me to the side. No recognition for me, no money, no nothing. So I just wanted to do a book and write in the book everything, that kind of went on and how I did the deal and how it all happened. So then once I announced the book, Connor contacted me and he was just saying to me, oh, you had nothing to do with the whiskey. What the fuck have you even done? Just completely turned on me, telling me all these things that I've never heard from him before. As you've seen the messages I shared before, he was so always kind to me and saying, Artem, you're my brother. You always have my back with this whiskey and with this fight. I'm going to look after you. So then he's telling me, you have nothing to do with this. You didn't do any of the whiskey. And I was like, hold on a second. This is all my work. My work is all over this. How can you say this? How can you do this to me? And I was still going to proceed with the book. However, when I met the lawyers to get some legal advice about the book, I was told straight away, listen, this book is never going to see, the light of day. They just going to, his lawyers, and their lawyers are just going to, bring you to court and you'll be fighting. You're going to spend an absolute fortune on legal fees. And, the book is not going to come out for many, many years. And they're just going to basically destroy you. The only way for you to be able to do the book and be able to tell the full story of what actually happened is to go to trial in the high court, because all the evidence that I give there is going to be protected, and I will be able to do a book if I want to or whatever else afterwards, So that's why I ended up in court.
Other than that conversation that you just spoke of, have you had any sort of interaction with Connor? Have there been any attempts to try to fix this just between the two of you, two old friends?
No, and that's another reason which tells me that he knows that, what I mean, that I'm in the right and he fucked me over, because he went on Twitter, slayed me, but never even sent one text or just a call saying, hey, what's going on? Let's sort it. Because he knows, what can he tell me? He knows I've done it. He knows how much work I've put in. He knows he shook my hand and promised me 5% no matter what. So that's why he never tried to contact me. He just went on Twitter and slayed me, publicly. Tried to, basically bully me out of court or whatever else he was trying to do there with that. But he should know that I don't tap, and that's one of the reasons why he was my such a good friend and why he respected me for those exact qualities. So does he now expect me to just back down here? And he himself was then giving out to me for kind of backing down against Khabib, and I said, listen, that was a mistake of mine. I will never allow that to happen again, and I stay by my word. So how did he want me to back down this time? No, I told him myself I would never back down again, and I'm sticking to my word. I have to fight till the end. I'm not a guy to tap.
And so going back to the training camp, going back to SBG, are there any sort of interactions with him? Has this caused any sort of rift for you at the gym?
No, I mean at the gym we just kind of I train at the gym. I don't really see him at the gym. He's not really as much there. He's traveling, or he trains at the house as well. He's got his own gym in the house. We
Okay,
don't really see, but I don't really we don't really see each other. But it hasn't really created any issues in the gym. No, everyone just kind of, because listen, obviously everyone is his friend, but they're also all of my friends. And
sure.
they know that I'm not a guy that ever was after money or whatever. Everybody knows that I'm a guy that never took a cent from him, that I always had his back. Even the situation with Khabib, why did I end up in that situation? Because there was an interview in Russian and they were asking me about some of the horrible stuff that Khabib said about Conor, and this was in Russian. I could have very easily just said something nice and just, oh, whatever. Conor would have never seen it. It's in Russian, but not a chance. If you're my brother, I have your back whether you see it or not. You never have to question my loyalty. I will never allow anybody to go at you, and that's what happened there, and I would do the same 100 times over, even after everything that's happened to me as a result. He had my back and I always had his.
A lot has obviously happened with Connor over the last few years, and he's making this push now to be elected, to be a part of the next elections in Ireland. What do you make of this?
Yeah. I mean, Conor was always after those kind of, crazy achievements, but in my mind, he needs to just stop all the messing, all the partying, get back in the gym and just get fit. Just real training, fuck all this, pretend training or whatever. Yeah, do a little bit of this, a little bit of that just to show I'm doing some training. No, let's do real fucking training. And to me, I think the way forward is grappling. He should start with grappling. Just grapple, because grappling is fun and it will get your body, your ligaments, everything ready for fight again. His body is not fight ready anymore. It's just all the ligaments, all the little muscles, everything in your body. It needs to be fight ready. And I think jiu-jitsu will allow you to do that in a safe environment, because jiu-jitsu is very safe in terms of injuries. It's fun, and to me, he should spend a few weeks first just grappling. Start with five fives, grappling 5 days a week, then build it up slowly up to 10 fives a day, and then from
Mhm.
there, I guarantee you, once the fitness comes back to him, then he will start the love for fighting will come back to him, and he will want to be in the gym, and he will want to add the sparring, he will want to add the wrestling and everything else. So that's what I would like to see him do. Not fuck all these presidential runs and all that can be done down the line, But right now, he just needs to get his mojo back, get his confidence back, remove the doubt, because doubt is only removed by action. Action of training hard, sparring the best guys out there. When I was there in his camp, that was always, there was not a chance Conor could have gotten away with being unfit. Not that I'm something special or whatever, but it's just because I was never going to take it easy with him, and he knew that. So once he enters to spar me, he has to be on point. He has to be in shape. Yeah, So I hope to see him back in shape.
You know what's so fascinating about this, Artem? Even when you were talking about him getting back on track, you said the word "we." Even as you're talking about him here, and obviously there's a lot of people criticizing him, and he has given people reasons to criticize him. You take no shots at him. You don't hit him below the belt. It almost seems genuine in that you want to see him get back to his old self, or at least attempt to get back to his old self. Despite everything that's
Yeah,
happened between you two, it doesn't feel like there's any real animosity from you to him, or at least you're doing a great job of not letting it show here, because I don't feel that. I feel genuine warmth from you as you talk about him, despite this legal battle that you've been involved in that's lasted a couple of years now.
yeah. I feel that if this was Conor of before, the guy that I know, we wouldn't have fallen out, and now it's completely different Conor. I don't recognize him. Just even to remind you, when he fought Mendes for the belt, he messed up in the documentary. They didn't actually show the full truth, because he messed up his knee with training with Rory McDonald. I was there in Canada, when it happened, when Conor took him down and Rory jumped a scissor, sweep right on his knee, and the crack was so loud. I was there when Professor Elatrash rang us and said, Conor, you're not fighting. You need another year, potentially 2 years, and another surgery. And Conor just said, no, fuck this. I'm fighting, and put the phone down. We couldn't even train for the camp. He was just doing rehab the whole time. And then in the documentary, they show when his knee went. That's actually the second knee. That's actually the good knee that went. So
Oh,
his ACL was messed up with one knee. And as we were training, doing grappling with like 3 or 4 weeks left to the fight, he messed up his other knee, his MCL and meniscus. Went in his other knee. So now he was on no legs. He had 0 legs. He was on one leg and now suddenly on 0 legs. Then Mendes gets put in against, rather than Aldo, a wrestler. We couldn't wrestle at all in camp. So this was just the worst fight you could possibly imagine. And what does he do? I'm fighting. I don't give a fuck. And now what? The Conor, what? He didn't even make it to the press conference with the sore toe. That's not the same Conor. This is not the guy that I know. I want to see the old one back. You know what I mean? And then I feel everything would be sweet between us as well. And we could get the band back together. I would love to see him come back, because I feel that if he was at 100%, we would be able to bring Khabib back as well. I think that Khabib would come back for that fight if Conor was 100% and fit, and making real moves, making real fights. He would just need one fight, knock the guy out, and then the whole world will be talking to Khabib and getting him to come back.
well,
And then we would do a real
That would
comeback
be
fight.
something.
That would be a fight that for the ages. I know that fight bothers Conor because he didn't train at all for that fight. Twice a week he was training for Khabib. And I tried to get him into Vegas. I said to him, Conor, come on, let's go to Vegas, man. We have to do it. Come on, brother. He said, no, fuck off. You just want to go on a holiday. He just didn't want to do it. He was in the wrong mindset. He was in a party mindset. He was training twice a week. That's it. So when I saw the fight, I was like, oh my God, if only you trained 4 times a week, you probably would have beaten him. But imagine him with full camp, the Conor that fought Alvarez, Imagine that Conor fighting Khabib. That's what I want to see.
Two last quick things, Artem. Brilliant stuff. Any interest in going back to bare knuckle? He's now a part of that as well.
Well, actually, funny you say this now, Ariel. There could be opportunity for me to come back for bare knuckle, but bare knuckle still owe me money.
Oh,
My fight with Paulie Malignaggi, I never got my pay-per-view money.
what? What do you
Dave
mean?
Feldman announced that it made 200,000 pay-per-views, and he told me first, look, you have to wait for the pay-per-view, 8 months or whatever before we pay you. So I waited that. Then I was messaging. He was like, "Oh, Artem, yeah, sorry, we just forgot. We're gonna pay you." Then I finally got my legal team to contact him, and what he said to my legal team was, "Look, we love Artem. Of course we're gonna pay him. Unfortunately, at this time, we're reinvesting all the money back into bare knuckle. We want to make it, as big as possible. We're really riding a good wave, so we need to continue reinvest. Once we're finally able to get some money out of it, of course, we're gonna pay him. So I'm waiting for this. I think Dave is a man of his word. I think he will pay me. It's about 300,000 that they owe me. It's not that big money, but it's pretty big. Once they settle that with me, of course, we can do a fight, no problem.
Okay, wow. And that was from what? 2019,
19.
2019. Geez.
Yeah.
Do you think that they are going to settle it? I mean, like,
Well, that's what he said. I'm taking him by his word. When he was talking to me, he was like, "Yes, Artem, sorry." When I got my legal team to contact him, he said what I just told you.
yeah,
They keep
yeah.
reinvesting money. He said, "I've put everything into this." And it's been. He says, "I've seen the results now, and I see that myself. They're doing good, and I understand what it takes to build the business." So I was like, "Okay, no problem. I will wait." Reinvest the money, but don't forget about me. I made a difference for that company. I definitely put them on the map. And this is something that we're agreeing on. It's in my contract, and I hope that Dave is a man of his word and pays me my pay-per-view money.
October 3rd, Dubai. Finally, after all these years, Artem Lobov, the return against Zubaira Tukhugov. What is the message to Zubaira after all these years, Artem? What do you want to say to this man as you are getting ready to fight him?
Zubaira, I hope you're as brave in there as you are when there's a gang of you against one. I hope you bring the same energy. Let's not start the cuddle party. You know what I mean? I don't want to be cuddling around the cage, holding down. Let's fight. Mess up this face. Come on, this is bare knuckle king you're talking to here. I'm not afraid of punches. I'm not afraid of blood. So let's bleed. Let's have a proper fight. And look, if we get a real fight in, we shake hands afterwards. But it has to be a real fight.
Love it. Freaking love it. Welcome back, Artem. You're the man. They call you the GOAT. You are the freaking GOAT. Incredible stuff. Not doing those interviews for 3.5 years, you built up incredible energy, and you saved it all for this moment, and you knocked it out of the park, my friend. So happy to see you back. All the best to you. Good luck in training, and can't wait to see you in there on October 3rd. Thank you again, Artem. Really appreciate it, and
Thank you
good luck
so
to you.
much, Ariel. And watch out for me. Choo choo, motherfuckers. I'm coming back.
Yeah, there he is, Artem Lobov. Choo choo, motherfuckers. We got it. That's incredible stuff right there. What a surprise. I got to tell you, when I started the week, I didn't think that we'd be talking to Artem Lobov on a Tuesday afternoon at 3:45 about a fight happening in October against Zubaira Tukhugov, but here we are. Thanks for watching this video. Before you go, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for us. Also, give us a thumbs up, leave a nice comment. These things go a long way. And while you're here, do check out the rest of the channel. We've got live shows and full interviews, clips, and a whole lot more. We're doing big things here, and we appreciate your support very much.